Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Good Morning Education Show, the weekend special. And this is weekend special, as we normally say, that the weekend special starts on Saturday, and on Saturdays we come to your studios, we come to your waves, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., and on Sundays we come 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. And it's always a very, very great time on the show. And if you're joining us, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your consistency. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being a part of the show. This is the Good Morning Education Show, and I believe that you're going to have a great time on the show this evening. And of course, the Good Morning Education Show runs from Mondays to Sunday. Tomorrow we'll be here as well, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Tuesday, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Wednesdays, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Thursdays, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Fridays, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. But remember, the Saturday and Sunday are weekend special, and therefore our timing is always adjusted to the weekend. So on Saturdays is 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. On Sundays is 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. This is another Sunday as we begin the new week. Our belief and our prayer is that this week will be a great one for you and all that belong to you. I believe that the pursuit of our week will find favor, will find grace, will find help. And we're streaming from Lagos, Nigeria to West Africa to Africa and the entire world. And we always say it's always a great morning, it's always a great day, it's always a great time, and it's always a great moment on the Good Morning Education Show. This is our belief, and we pass it across to everyone out there, and we believe that it will be your reality as well. And as we start the show this evening, I have to tell you we have something interesting to talk about. And it's going to be a dialogue, it's going to be a practical session, and I believe that you'll find something that is valuable. And if you're just joining us for the first time, please do let us know. Tell us your name, tell us your location, where you're streaming from, so that we can welcome you and recognize you and acknowledge you on the show. We are always excited to see new people. And of course, we also welcome our tribe members who consistently, and I repeat the word consistently, they always stand by us, they always watch the replay, they always catch up on the live stream and also contribute as well. If you have questions in our conversation, please feel free. We will answer your questions as much as we can because we have analysts and experts who are always on standby, who join us from time to time to share their views and expertise on the subject matter of discussion. And today will not be an exception. I'm going to welcome Dr. Fini Folu Falodun, and I would like to say good evening, Fini. How are you today?
Good evening from Nigeria and good day to everyone else in other time zones. It's a pleasure to be here this evening on the Good Morning Education Show. Thank you.
You almost said on the Good Evening Education Show. I would have sent some virtual whips to put you into order.
Well, you can never tell. It might be good evening education for me.
Okay, so now that we are live and we're direct, I was just telling our audience that the conversation today is just going to be interesting. And we really look forward to their contributions, participation, etc. So let's get straight to the matter of the day. I like to say good evening, internet, as well, because sometimes the internet tends to show its ugly head and its ugly face. And we also like to welcome Olushola Olumide. Good evening. Welcome to the show, sir.
Good evening, Rochimi. Good evening, Finfolu. Good evening to our tribe members across the globe. It's nice being here again.
Good evening, sir.
Okay. So let's get straight to the matter of the day. Find a credible mass. And I'd like to start with Faye to give us an introduction to the show, if she doesn't mind. Thank you, Faye. Over to you. So let me do a bit of introduction. So the conversation of today will be opening our eyes to see what ought to be done, what needs to be done, and what the decisions and our interventions within the education space would need a credible mass. There's something about numbers. Of a movement. And I like to start with Olushola Olumide. When we talk about finding a credit numbers.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I didn't hear the question. I think it glitched along the line. But I know you're talking about having.
So I was talking about numbers.
Yes, numbers. Well, numbers from time immemorial are there been something to be reckoned with. We talk about synergy. We talk about the issue of collaboration. And a very good example that comes to mind is the broom. When you look at the broom, it is often being said in our local parlance, if you pick it one after the other, it will be easy for you to just break it into pieces. But if you take the bunch of the broom, that is where the strength lies. It will be difficult for anybody to bend it and break it at once. So I think the issue of number, we can't overemphasize it. And the more people doing great stuff in the education space comes together, not just isolated voice here, another one there, or let me go my way, you go your way. I believe we can always find a consensus. There can always be a point of convergence, irrespective of what you do. Somebody is in tech, the other is in curriculum, somebody is in the behavioral aspect, somebody is on the issue of emotional, somebody is in the issue of early years. Yes, great stuff. I think we will come together to speak with one voice as an educator or at education sector, and that this is what we want. This is the direction education should be going. I think whoever is in government or as a policy maker, we have no choice than to pay attention. So we can't really rule out the number. I think it's a force to be reckoned with, and it gives strength to our individual ability and credibility. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You mentioned that numbers give credibility, and that's very true. A lot of times, people talk about data, and there's anything that goes with data. We're talking about information. We're talking about numbers, and this is where we need conversation of the day. Is really talking about finding a credible mass, and now I'd like to term, or better still, I like to put it like saying that the first layer of block that we need to really put into consideration is even the critical mass itself, And when you talk about critical mass, you cannot talk about that without thinking about the metaphor behind it. How do we get to understand, the value or the depth or the reality of a critical mass? Because sometimes a lot of people, yes, we know that mass means numbers, but sometimes a lot of people give up trying to do anything because their concern is that numbers means you're talking about gravitating into hundreds of thousands. And sometimes some type of change that you want to achieve or effect, it doesn't necessarily requires across several fields, where just few people became a critical mass to themselves. Credible, it has to be critical. It has to be something much more than figureheads or figure numbers or figure hands. I don't know if you want to say anything about that, sir.
Yes. I understand you and I agree with you. However, I want us to look at it from the angle of influence. Hello, can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you, sir.
Hello?
Sorry about. Yes, I can hear
Okay.
you. Continue, carry on.
Yes, I was looking at it from the angle of influence. Take, for
Please
example,
carry on.
yes, a particular individual, everybody knows this is what this person represents. If he's championing a cause, it's like a one-man mopo. There are foot soldiers behind him, even though those foot soldiers may not be physically present. Because the person has become a force to be reckoned with, has been around for long, and has championed causes and cases. And it is believed that, oh, when this person goes for this thing, we may not see the crowd behind him, but we know the influence that person commands. So we can't rule out influence. And the trust has been built. There is credibility over the years, because in a way, except you are just going to, how do I put it now? Except you are looking for sycophants who may not necessarily even be committed to your cause. But if you have paid your dues, if you have invested in people, if you have succeeded in doing things that resonate with people, when you go out for a cause, there are people who are following you, who feels if you are going this direction, I think we're going to go with you. We are loyal to you. So I feel the issue of influence has to come in. Before pockets of people will say this is what we want, yes. And as long as those people, they are like, as you said, critical mass, they are like the life of that advocacy or that movement. As long as they are there, some people will always queue behind them. So I want to look at it from our circle of influence. What have we been able to do? What we are doing, does it resonate with people? Do people believe in us? Have they seen us do something before now? Can they be their chest and say, I know so and so? If he's fighting for a cause, I think that cause has to be right. That has to be built over time. So the people who are going to be the critical mass must have what we call bedrock. They are standing on something that people believe, and they know that they're not going to be saboteurs. They know that they're not just mere noise. When they are out for a cause, they follow the cause through and through. So people will not feel betrayed along the line. Okay, you trying to champion a cause, we are here following you, either physically or virtually or supporting financially or whatever. Only for you to back out when we are in the middle of the stream, and it will break trust. So I feel influence is crucial. If anybody is going to be the critical mass, or the people are going to be the critical mass upon which others are looking up to and following, then they must have earned the trust and loyalty of the people that are following them. I think with that, is going to really go a long way.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Finn is back right now. I'm sure Finn would like to share our own thoughts. Finding a credible mass. We're breaking this and zoning this into education. So Finn Follow, would you like to share your thoughts on this? Finding a credible mass. Over to you.
When I think of credible mass, two things come to mind. One, numbers. Two, intent. So, first of all, to have a mass, you're talking about something that has that occupies considerable space, something that you cannot just ignore, is not inconsequential. And when we talk about this mass in education or in the education space, then we're looking at educators, regulators, administrators, everyone that comes into that makes that sector, that makes the wheel turn. We're looking at that at a an what's the word now? A number of people that you cannot ignore. And it's not just that you can't ignore them because of their number, but because of the kind of influence that they're making. So some people may have so much influence maybe within their local environment, within their local reach. They may not have, even within the state, they may not be known. But in the local government, they are voices and forces to reckon with. If we can have all of these people come together with those that are known within their states, nationally, globally, and then they are a credible force to deal with. They're not people that today are trying to hold the government to ransom, or tomorrow they're trying to hold parents to ransom. Day after, they're saying something about students not being the ones cooperating with them to reach a result. But these are people that that once they set foot on the starting line and they start to move, we are sure that they're going to deliver. Then that's what comes to mind when I think of credible mass. And to me, that credible mass is a group, a formidable group that is not after individual spotlight on them, but after the collective good. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your last line, especially that it's not only people focusing on limelight, and at the end of the day, you now lose your critical level of being credible. And I think that we're back to what happened during the colonial era and slave trade period. I was studying a book over the weekend that kind of opened my eyes on some things that we really, really, really need to know about our origin as the Black nation or as Africa in perspective. And one of the things that I think that individualism, or what people will call the concept of humanism, it does is that it takes away the collective and it brings the individual to the center focus. And sometimes what that does is that it impedes on a collective agenda because everybody wants to feel good, look good, be good, and all that. And in finding, because one of the words we must pay attention to tonight is the word finding. How do we go about this? Because I think sometimes when we are not, and when we drop powerful submissions, I think what might be missing, the missing link, is the fact that the work that needs to be done is not well articulated. So it still goes away as conversational. It's not activational. How do we get to do that? I'm going to come back to Olushola. How do we treat the issue of finding? That word finding, how do we address it? Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Trying to find is, I think it's a tall order for me, especially looking at the complexity of human mind. Like you rightly said, individualism and issue of concept of humanism. For me, I think finding that stems from selflessness. As we were talking, what came to my mind? I remember the Tower of Babel. Then, while ruminating on it, I was thinking that deploying the same strategy does not mean we have the same motive. What I mean is it? God divided their language, but God has the best of motive. Do you know that human beings keep using that strategy that God used at the Tower of Babel, but with impure motive? What you do is just break their language. Let them not see eye to eye. Let them pursue individual agenda. So I feel selflessness is key, and I think it's good to communicate what we are targeting. There should be a proper communication as to the agenda we are pursuing, so that somebody will not misconstrue what we are up to. Despite the fact that communication can be made, do you know that once you are beginning to gather people more than 3, 4, 5, you have written letter to a saboteur in the team.
Mhm.
All your opponent or enemy needs is to find a Judas. That is all. They will keep trying. They will keep pushing. They will come and lure you. Name us. Can you give us your price? If you say, no, say, okay, sit down there. You are still serious with this your agenda. They go to somebody else. If only everybody can be selfless, and it is said that the group is as strong as its weakest link. So if we are selfless, and I think if there is a proper communication channel so that there is no ambiguity as to what we are up to or what our target is, I think with that, we will be able to find a credible man. Selflessness and the line of communication being clear, no ambiguity. I think with that, for me, there are many others, but I think I want to anchor on that too. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. So quickly to Finn. Finn, you heard what Olusolalunde said, and I want to address the issue of selflessness because it's sometimes alien in some culture and in some settings. So sometimes the moment you see selflessness at work and in practice, I think sometimes that's the first thing that brings or breeds suspicion. I don't know why.
You are right. Yes, you are right.
It's too good to be true, you know. So sometimes people I don't know whether they tend to gauge the level or extent of their own sacrifice or ability to go along. And so what happens is they profile and say, at the end of this person would have looked like he gave all. And because they don't feel that there's a likelihood of equal stardom, equal share in fame, they feel that that selflessness, in fact, is not a state, but a strategy. I want you to speak to that thing. How can we instill the place of finding? Because I think also there's an element I would like to share, but let's hear it from you. How do we begin to ensure that people don't fight the state of selflessness, even though they are looking at it as your own branding to edge yourself away from others? Over to you, Finn.
I think suspecting selflessness says more about the person with the suspicion than the person being selfless. If I'm rendering a service, whatever I'm doing, I give it my 100%. So if I meet somebody else who is giving 100%, I'm not trying to I'm not trying to figure out what their agenda is. I feel, oh, this person is just being a conscientious person. So for me, the work begins with the person suspecting, or the mass that suspects and feels like, there's an agenda behind this. Or this person is doing this because they want more recognition, or because they want to take my place, or because they want to outshine me. Instead of putting so much focus on that and suspecting the agenda of the other person, why is it so difficult for us to just admit and accept that there are people who just give their all, who just give their everything to whatever it is that they're doing? And if really we're going to find that credible mass, then things like that should be one of the major things that we expunge. One of the things, because we're talking about a credible mass. So if somebody is not going to be selfless, then they cannot be credible. If you're saying that, oh, you're entrusting this person, you're entrusting this aspect of work to this person, and they are expected to deliver maybe 80 points in a day. And because they feel, oh, look, my selflessness may be suspected, or I may get into trouble with the orgas at the top, or with whatever. I may get into trouble for being selfless. And then they decide to cut down and they're delivering 50 points. That unit of the mass is no longer credible, because they are operating below expectation. And even though 50 points may look like, oh, it's a pass mark out of 80. Still, they haven't given it the maximum that they can. So I believe that in finding that credible mass, part of the things that we need to start with is enshrining and entrenching the fact that things like selflessness, things like honesty, things like you can say something and I trust you that, oh, you're going to deliver. I don't have to check back. I don't have to employ somebody else whose job description is to be ascertaining that people did their jobs. No, for me to know that, oh, this person is on this thing and they are going to deliver it. That is how we're going to move that mass forward. So for me, where suspicion comes in, then we haven't even started at all. Where we're still looking at it and feeling like, oh, those people that they call Omo teacher when we're in school, and they feel he's doing everything he's doing because he wants the teacher to like him, or he's doing it because they're looking for the favor of the one person or that person. If we don't take those kind of attitudes and beliefs out, then we cannot have this credible mass. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So brilliantly said. And this is what I also think that we also need to look at. I feel that one thing that can affect all this in a positive way is to look at the word placement. There's a lot of things that have to happen when we talk about a credible mass. That placement is something we must not overlook. In fact, sometimes it's almost like saying that, this was in 2000, and I think 2012, thereabout, 11, 12, or 13, one of those years, when we were kind of looking at strategic aspect of a development framework for sectors. And we looked at it, for example, let me use an example of what we did. We had to do an analysis. If we said that we wanted to have, for example, we wanted to have home for all, as in houses for all. Let's say, for example, houses for all the families in Lagos State. So what it simply means is that you must be able to articulate to the letter, what that means. In every house, there should be at least a bed. Do you agree, Shola or Fini? Do you agree? In a house, there should be a bed, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So it means that, let's say, for example, we want to provide house for, let's say in Lagos, we have 2 million families. Lagos has about 24 to 25 million people. Let's say, for example, let's just say that we have 2 million homes we want to provide. It simply means that for you to achieve that, let's say, for example, we want to achieve that by December 31st, 2022. That means that by that time, it tells us that we need to ask ourselves the number of trees that need to be grown or that needs to be felled. That is, trees have to go into becoming bed. Are you get what I'm trying to say? So it's not just providing a home, then you now begin to connect the dots. Do you understand? It also tells us the kind of investment that has to go into the building option of either assembling the house with raffia, with wood, with plastic, with containers, or with brick and mortar. It tells you the number of bricklayers that we need, or the bricklayer services that has to be transacted, so that if somebody is thinking of going into a particular trade, by the projections of the policy of the state and the drive of industry and development, people can take a cue to where they need to invest their energy into. So, for example, if we're saying education for all, and it's not a statement of lips, but it's a statement of development. Remember, development comes after an agenda. Statement of lips comes after we formulate policies, right? So when it now gets into a place of that, then automatically you can equally say that if we have about 17 million people out of school, so it simply means that if they were going to be schooled, it means that, let's imagine, out of the 17 million out of school children, let's imagine that, say, 5 million are within the early years bracket, meaning that they are in the foundational stage. So it simply means that you have 5 million people that you have a business plan of at the least 12 years engagement, meaning that they'll go through primary school and they'll go through secondary school, meaning that 6 years in primary school, 6 years in secondary school. That makes you 12 years. Automatically, it means you have a 12-year market timeline 12 years market space that you can plan your return on investment, you can plan your payback period, you can plan your governance, you can plan your manifesto, you can plan your party formation. That's about how many governments. Well, depending if there's no second term. If there's second term, that means you have how many terms? 4 years, 4 years, 4 years. That means you have at least 2 sitting governors that you can do a blueprint and a roadmap for. So when we look at that, that tells us that in finding a credible mass, we cannot run away from placement. This is why I devised a concept I'd like to share, which is the word mass. When we talk about finding a credible mass, it means that we must also place a credible movement, M for movement, that there must be a movement, meaning that as we understand that we might not get the numbers all together in one day, overnight, but we can get the movement to start off overnight. And how can that be? It simply means that, just like Shola Olumide was saying, we are able to articulate that, yes, number one, these are the numbers of XYZ that needs to happen. We need a credible amount in terms of critical number of showcase. So we decide how many things must be showcased that will give us credibility and that will give us some measure of number and traction. Then we'll move away from that. We'll talk about what is the education that needs to take place. And when I say education, I'm not saying school. That's the knowledge, the awareness, the publicity that needs to take place in the minds of people because of the wrong things that have been in their mind and the wiring. We begin to look at that. So there must be credible movement. There must be credible agenda where we actually can openly tell ourselves the truth and state up front that, look, this is not going to be a walk in the park. And guys, if you're looking for fame, please raise up your hand. And you raise up your hand, you're not one of us. You know, those kind of things. And if you're going to get fame, you can't get fame until 9 months' time. You can't get fame until 2 years' time. The first set of people that get fame is A, B, C. And this is the reason why. The next set of people that are being in line, this is the reason why. You know, you begin to look at it. So from the credible movement, it moves to the credible agenda. And a credible agenda must be backed up by credible strategy. That's the S. The first S in mass. And then once you have a strategy in place, then you must birth a credible system. A movement, agenda, strategy, and system makes you have a credible mass. Now I'm coming to Olushola Olumide. Now, listening to all that I've said, right? What do you think we stand to gain? What are the enormous benefits for us in this part of the world, for our climb and our sector? What do we stand to gain once we're able to find a credible mass?
Thank you very much, and I thank you for the great submission you have made. The concept you have just given out now is so audible to the deaf. It will be a long-term benefit. The generation unborn will be bad to repeat. The people who champion the cause may no longer be around. However, a formidable template will have been made, which assists the succeeding generation to build upon. That is a great blueprint. Why do you think in this part of the world, we are moving like a rudderless ship on the ocean of life? No blueprints. There's nothing like continent. Government should be a continent, there should be a continuity, but we're not saying it. If what you have said now, the movement, the agenda, the strategy, and the system comes into being or into place, it is a template. Just fix as each generation comes, we can only tweak it in order to meet the present need. Yes. We rejig it, we tweak it based on the current challenges. And educators, administrators, regulators, for the early years, 12 solid years. Whatever you have done consistently, continually for 12 years, I think you'll have got mastery. Not only that, you will have succeeded in birthing a lot of solutions. The coming generation will not be grouping in the dark because some group of people have charted a course for them. It's like the template, the critical mass is like taking the education sector through the Red Sea. And the template, there is a Moses who has parted the Red Sea. If somebody decided to jump inside the water, it will not be lack of clarity, it will be self-illusion. Because already the water has been divided. All you need to do is to walk through it. If somebody now chooses and say, well, this water that is standing, let me delve into it, it will be glaring to the blind that this one has only chosen to enter inside the water. It won't be because there is no pathway, no path to follow. So I think that clarity, it even shortens the journey of the coming generation. It shortens their journey to achievement. They don't have to sit down all over racking their brain as to what to do. The template is on ground. The Western world we are talking about, some of the template they are working with have been back some 50 years, if not more. So I think there is an enormous benefit. Everybody stands together. It will be a win-win situation at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Finn, we bring the question back to you. So we've heard a bit about the benefits, of finding a credible mass, right? I think that I want to ask you a two-in-one question. What's the urgency for this? And then, of course, what's the sacrifice that will follow? So is there a time-bound thing? Is there an urgency? If there is, please let us know. And if possible, what sacrifice has to come into this thing? Over to you.
The urgency for me is like we need this mass like since day before yesterday. Like it should already be in force. We should already have we've been talking about in the past couple in the last number of days. So we've been talking about collaborations. We've been talking about the need for the new phase of education to emerge. We've been talking about what to do, how to employ the old with the new. And we're not saying that everything that is old is bad and everything that is new is good. No, but we've been talking about aligning ourselves to global expectations, and not because we want to be we want it to be like an anchor kind of thing, like, oh, because everybody's doing it, we're doing it, but because it is the demand of the hour, because it is essential and crucial to the now that we catch up with development and global realities. So yes, the urgency for the credible mass is like already it should be in place. It should be it should be enforced already. Now, talking about the sacrifice, part of the sacrifice, we have talked about some of them. Selflessness, yeah, that is one. Another sacrifice that will be demanded of members of this mass is killing the self, dying to self, dying to wanting to see profit, self-profit and gratification in everything. Because so many times we take part in projects and interventions, in initiatives, but at the base of it is the need to be seen, is the need to be known. Everybody has an alias. Everybody has maybe their AKAs, and so there's hardly anybody now that you say their name and there's no AKA to it. So everybody wants to be seen as making sense, as moving and shaking. But one thing that we don't put into consideration is if every aspect of the building was what we saw, then the buildings will not even be standing. There is the foundation, there are the pillars, there are other parts of a building that are not obvious or visible to the eyes. And this, in my opinion, are even the most important parts of the building. So we need to understand that part of the sacrifice expected of us is dying to self, is forgetting gratification, instant gratification, and putting the interest of the system forward. So it's not about, oh, at the end of this thing, yes, for every labor there is there is profit, there is reward, but in this particular, for this master we're talking about, their first maybe if we're to give them their job description, on the top of that job description is not making profits. On the top of that job description is causing a transformation, is bringing about a turnaround that will place our education system in that place where it can enviably and comfortably compete with the global realities that we have right now. So for me, these are some of the sacrifices that will be that are needed, and uh, that we will be calling on for the credible mass. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I'll just also bring the second angle of it. I think that once we're able to figure out placement, the next thing that should be on our lips, and also something like a covert strategy, which is not openly visible to the average mind, is proliferation. What's happening to my tongue today? Proliferation.
Proliferation.
I think I need a cup of tea. So, I think once you are able to get placement, we need to not just reproduce and replicate, but we must be able to penetrate, because we need voices, we need people, we need expertise in critical areas. I was sharing with a friend and a colleague in the industry on Friday, and I was saying some things. I said, look, sometimes the change that we speak about is not necessarily going to come out as a result of surface advantages or surface moves. No, no. And I said that, for example, I did an analysis of the individual I was talking to. I said, do you know that there are some things that you can make happen that people will not consider change, only for you to wait till the outcome of that move? And you see that it's just almost like you are detonating bombs across the world. Do you get what I'm trying to say? And what I'm saying in a positive sense is this.
Yes.
Sometimes we need to begin to ask ourselves, do we need some measure of rearrangement where we can say that there's a lot? Imagine when you find out a lot, like Finn was saying, appellations to different names, aliases, aka Rotimeter, the coach, Rotimeter, the this, Rotimeter, different things. Can we find, instead of people seeking to become Goliaths to the experts in the industry, to take them down so they can also have a voice, could we move in a different strategic way, where we say, what if we have this kind of mind speaking, and we also have this kind of minds in administration, we also have this kind of minds in so and so places. So instead of asking for some people to stop what they're doing, we could ask for favors where they are, so that we can place people. I'm trying to speak in parables, but I know you understand what I'm trying to say. So that when we're able to proliferate into areas of influence, areas of strategic concern, we can get things done. We need gatekeepers in a lot of places. And I think that we need to begin to ask ourselves, are there ways to do that? There are obvious ways for it. There are also non-obvious ways for it. Sometimes it's through the route of employment. Sometimes it's through the route of engagement. Sometimes it's also through the route of how do I put it now? Orientation and indoctrination, as it were. So I would like to hear from Olushola Olumide, because take for example, whether we like it or not, if you say somebody should sing a rhyme, or you say someone should sing something about children, there are some rhymes that you pick up, you find out that those rhymes were handed over to us. And these rhymes were made public and possible through a medium. That's some measure of proliferation. I don't know whether I get my point. We don't sing folk tales. We don't sing African songs. I remember I was in primary school and a bit of secondary school, maybe first first two classes, just one, just as two. I don't think people sing Iggy or Rombo. It's not a matching song anymore because probably might be sounding. It might be yeah.
It's long gone. If you mention that, she don't be looking at that and say, which
I
one
think
is looking
we
in
replace
tongues?
that with Mr. Son, Mr. Goldie Son.
Yes.
All right, over
Well,
to you, sir.
I understand you. And to corroborate what you have said, pushing from without makes the work strenuous. It makes us farther from the foundation of the root we are trying to push or pull. So we can rule out the possibility of having people. Yes, they are part of the agenda. They don't necessarily need to come to the surface, as you have said, but they are closer to powers than some of us outside. The only thing is that, do they buy into our agenda? If yes, in a subtle way, they can bring that agenda to bear with the regulators or the lawmakers. It may just be a suggestion. Who is pushing the agenda may not even be necessary, as long as the person or the people at the end of affairs say, oh, you mean this will be okay? It's okay. We'll brand you with your name. At least this will be to your credit in a way. And the person will hit the ground running and say, okay, let's execute this. And because the person has power, he has position, he has that authority, he can veto things, he demands that let this be done. And majority who are outside were like, is this a coincidence? We still spoke about this like 3-4 months ago. We have not even made the move. Meanwhile, one or two among us had contacted somebody who is in-house. So we can rule out the fact that penetration requires having somebody in there who buys into the agenda. And I'm trying to look for a very good analogy. Okay, let me use a. In those days, we used to catch crab. Crab now. So at times the hole will be so deep, it will absorb the whole hand, that by the time you are trying to reach the crab, your shoulder is on the floor. Instead of having to stretch yourself, the thing is also digging deeper and you are trying to force. So the first thing we do is to clear the surface and extend that place. We dig from, instead of pushing hand inside the hole, we dig the ground. That means we are shortening our distance to where the crab is. If once you put your hand and see the root, the thing has moved to, you just map it from above and cut it and dig it out, dig the sand. By the time you have done that halfway, you just need a little from your palm to see the thing where the thing is hiding. So you just pick it and go out of your way. Then secondly, it also it delivers from the danger, because at times we are looking for crab, but actually there is snake inside the thing. So if you just push your hand, being an amateur, and say, okay, this is where the hole passes through, and you try to stretch your hand, you may be meeting a snake inside. But when you cut the ground from the top, and all the swampy area, easy to dig. You dig it considerably so that you can see the next thing or the next way to follow. And at times, after digging to the right a little, you discover that the thing turned to the left. When you dig from the top, you're able to see a clearer picture of where the thing is navigating through. You'll be able to follow through to get what you are looking for. So I feel we need somebody in there who buys into the agenda. The person may not even be making noise, except for selected people who are interfacing with the person who knows this one is among us. So I think we need people, apart from proliferation, as you have said, we need, for that penetration to be easy, we need people in there whose voice may not necessarily be heard on top of the roof, but they are doing the work silently, and we are getting the change that is required. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, Well said, absolutely. I don't know if he wants to add one or two things. Can you follow?
What? Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, now.
Okay.
Yes.
What I would like to add is that for us to have this credible mass, for us to have the buy-in of everyone who should be, in when you talked about finding the other time, and in finding we can find in for me in three ways. In either the person volunteering, in us actually seeking to find, or in referencing, or in references. So for us to be able to assemble and to have this credible mass pulled together, then there is a need for us as educators to unite and have the same focus. And this focus is not necessarily in saying, oh, we want all of our children when they finish to do the SATs or A levels and leave the country, but that our education system is a whole lot better, is getting individuals ready for life ahead of them. It's not going to be rote learning. It's not going to be cramming. And once we can build that trust in ourselves, and we're not looking at each other and feeling like, oh, what's she doing in her school anyway? What's he doing that I can't do? Or this person seems to be making a lot of money. Let me go and float my own school. Then we'll begin to have the credible mass that we so urgently need and that we desire to have. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And I'd just like to bring this to more or less spice it up as we're about to bring this to a close. And this has to do with what you said. It got me thinking. I didn't plan to bring this up, but I'll do that, and I'll try to see how we can accommodate that. I think that from my own perspective, that also one of the things that we can use as a litmus test or a case study is the reality that everybody doesn't frown at results per se. And we all want results, whether we have the capacity and competence or not. Everybody either claims or desires results, right? But our current reality puts exams before results. And when I say exam, I mean examination before results. I mean from a conceptual perspective. And that puts a lot of pressure in people's pursuits. Just even look at it in practical terms. When we talk about exams now, we're talking about the ones that people write. For terminal classes, for example, the West African School Certificate Examination, you find out that there's a lot of pressure because the exam seems to be bigger than the result. In the eye of the student, the exam is worshipped, the exam is dreaded, the exam is so big than the results, even though the results are consequential than the exam. But then I think that we need to begin to ask ourselves, is there a way where in building a credible mass conceptualization, also in the reality of that case study, that we begin to make people see the results before the examination? It's just like looking at a facilitator who is skilled, who knows his onions, who has a great clarity and mastery on the subject matter. By the time that person is invited to speak, regardless of the dynamic nature of the audience or the enormity of the crowd and all that, you find out that that person, because of his is hello, can you hear me now? Okay. So because of
Yeah, I
that,
can hear
it's
you.
easier for that person, it's easier for that person to perform. Why? Because the person has been witnessing a lot of what he considers as results over exam. But you know what we have is we have most times examination and then we define you with the results thereafter. I don't know if the question
Yes.
is actually directed to both of you as we wrap up. So let's start
Okay.
with Olufala and then I come to King.
Dauphin, okay. It's a valid point you have made, and my only concern is trying to reinvent the wheel or trying to shift focus or attention. I think there are people profiting from the exam, making the exam almighty. Because there are people who have created industry out of exam malpractices. So all that will be affected. And I think teachers reorientation, school owner, administrator, and like, see, we can expose these students. Going to write the exam will not be new, and they don't have to dread writing the exam. We don't have to paint a picture of doom. We have to let them realize that because primary school education has its objective, secondary school education has its objective. With or without passing WAEC, has that objective been met? If no, if that child eventually write exam and pass, he has well not been well tutored. So I think it will call for a whole lot of reorientation, because as we are talking now, it's not everybody in the education space who is listening to this. And if you pick, apart from the student, parents, and sorry for taking your time. One of the boy who wrote the last UTME exam, I just discovered they didn't call me. Later, the father eventually called me, and he says, "See, your boy embarrassed everybody." I said, "What do you mean?" He said he had 160. I had to talk to the father. I said, "Now, you chose not to call me because the boy had 160. You felt sad and bad. Did you bother to find out why the boy scored 160? Did you think on the way forward? Because you just sat down on that result and he was feeling ashamed to call me." How can you be feeling ashamed that the boy? I said, "Was it the one that scored the lowest?" He said, "No." I said, why put yourself in such a state of mind? And like you are like, how do I now talk to this man now that my boy had 160? What an embarrassment this boy has caused us. I said, the boy has not caused you any embarrassment. What can we do for the boy to be better? Let's start preparation for the next exam, other alternatives. So why it may be difficult to reorientate educators, do you know it will be much more difficult to reorientate parents? Yes. They have their mind made up and they know what they are looking for. I think they are used to running up and down, shaking up and down. Pay this, they pay that, they pay, do this, they do. All you are saying is that the exam will be well. So I think a whole lot of reconfiguration had to take place. Thank you.
Thank you. Fee, over to you, and that will be the closing remark.
But I missed the question. I was out briefly.
So we're trying to juxtapose the reality within this concept of finding a credible mass, and also taking into case study the fact that we don't most times show the capacity of people from the place of result before assessment, which is also known as exams. And so that makes exams so dreaded because you don't know your outcome and you are not defining you until after your exams. But a lot of people spend years in school and they are building up the momentum to find out the exam because they've not seen much about themselves before now. The exam defines them, and that's so much a pressure on their mental preparation. And this also happens in real life. When you bring a thing to speak on a subject matter that she's great at, regardless of the size of the audience, yes, you might feel nervous, but your antecedents and premise can actually position you to still deliver. Why? You've seen your result before the examination. That speaking event is an assessment of what your result is an experiencing of your result. So that's why I said, okay, so how can we juxtapose that in this reality of making sure that it's not exam before result, it's actually result, then examination. So That's it.
Okay, so I get it. So now I understand the analogy of the boy with 140 and or 160. And I think this thing of results and exams would start with the parents and the educators. For many Nigerian students, before you even get into an institution at all, it's the fear of exams first. It's the fear of, before a child gets to the terminal classes, GS3, SS3, the fear of junior WAEC, the fear of JAMB and the WAEC exams have been so put into you from the first class, from GS1, and you keep hearing things hammered like, oh, if you don't do this, if with this result, you're not going to make your junior WAEC, and then SS1, you don't even have a breathing space. Now you're in the senior year, and we find that the anxiety that students go through is because their teachers, their schools are putting them on pressure, are putting them under pressure rather, so that the school's rating remains high, so that the school's rating is considered excellent. Oh, all our students passed with 100%. 95% of our students passed with A1s. So the school is putting them under that pressure. Parents are saying, oh, do you know how much school fees I'm paying on you? I mean, I hear parents say that for children in nursery school. Like, do you know what their fees cost? Ah,
That's
child,
serious.
the child is put under so much pressure that when they finally have to face the exams, they're not even after the results per se. The students are after the results so that they can get all of these people off their neck, off their back. And so for me, our reorientation needs to come from the parents and maybe from if teachers, if school administrators are able to guide parents right, that look, I mean, in the last school system I was in, we did not have examinations. Our students were assessed periodically from the first day that they get into class. They're being assessed, so we have different ways of assessing them without it being test. They have and in this assessment they're able to express themselves in different methods. So we have children that can express themselves by you ask them to take a research and they want to express it in modeling. They want to draw something or they want to build something to give you the answer that you want. Some of them want to do it on PowerPoint. Some of them want to do it in writing a storybook to say, look, this is the answer that. And for me, as a teacher, I learned a lot in that system, as much as the students were also learning. So there was no terror of exams, even though yes, at the end of every term, they had their report cards. We had a way of converting all the rubrics to figures. But the in fact, the children would not even see the figures. It was sent directly to their parents because the point was not for them to see and say, "Oh, I scored 40%." The point was, have you learned? That was the main point we were driving at, and that whatever
Great.
it is that you have learned, whatever it is that you have learned, you can express it in your own way. So if you wake up any of those children, they can tell you what they have learned in their own words. It wasn't by, oh, my teacher said this, so it is that. And then when it's time for them to take tests or exam, some of them were even writing assessments without, they were so relaxed. There was no, and that's when you get the best out of the students. That's when you get the best out of yes, we had parents who, I had a parent who told me that if my child doesn't get an award this, just make sure that I'll pack her bag. She'll go home with you. And I said, no problem now. We'll have a lovely holiday together. Send me the child. Because for us, the focus is not on that, is not on the exam, it's not even on the results, is on has this child learned anything in the school term. So we need to change the orientation of educators, change the orientation of teachers, and then we'll have better results from our learners. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that, Finny. Because the truth of the matter is, when we talk about academics, I think we need to also redefine it. A lot of people miss the point when we say academic excellence or when we say academics. Academics is not results. And it's, oh, the children, that's the major reason why they're in school. That's a lie that we've been told from time immemorial. And it's because those people have said that either are unaware or are lazy to really find out the reality of academics. Academics and the academia is actually a refined process of becoming. So it's much more than subject matter. And because we don't even know that we don't even have enough subjects or the right subjects that we should be teaching, especially with context to our climb, you know. So we believe that with time that we will get this done, and that's why we are always, driving for things like this on the Good Morning Education Show. I'd like to thank Olushola Olumide. I'd like to thank Fiyinfo Olufalodun. I'd like to thank myself for a wonderful session again, as we always promise our guests and audience that it's always a great time on the show. We will be back tomorrow with something yet. In fact, the topics of this week. Fiyin was saying that, well, we're building up, we are blasting off this week. Trust me, you have to have the conversation of this week. Put up your seatbelt, strap up yourself, brace yourself, because this week is going to be hot, back to back. And we'll be back tomorrow, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Monday on the show. Please make it a date with us. Subscribe to our channel. Follow our analysts. Follow Fiyin on Instagram, and follow her on Facebook. Follow her on every platform. The same.
What's Fiyin's name on Instagram?
She has different accounts. She's the pearl
I was trying to tag her yesterday. I was trying to tag her yesterday for my live show tomorrow, but I typed Fiyinfolu no come up. I say okay.
Let's look for the pearls with dimples. I don't know when pearls have dimples. All right, so
okay.
Ashefi is looking at me in 3D that she'll get back at me. All right, so thank you so much.
Coming for you, you know that.
Thank you.
Let's sign off at the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. It is always
a great morning on the Good Morning Education Show.
Bye.
It remains Good Morning Education Show.